Morocco is on a long road to recovery. After a massive earthquake flattened villages in the high Atlas Mountains, international crews have been helping the hundreds of thousands of people affected. So how does foreign aid after events like this actually work?
The first important part is assessment. So what's actually happened? Who and what areas have been impacted? What are the needs of people who have been impacted?
Penny Harrison is Chief of Staff at Australian Red Cross.
There's a whole range of different events that can occur. We have cyclones, major bushfire events, major heatwave events, floods. It can be impacts of war, so war between countries, or other sorts of conflicts. So a whole range of different circumstances sort of can be covered in that humanitarian assistance lens.
In most countries, there's something called the National Disaster Management Office. What that will do is do a first assessment of needs.
This is Beth Delaney. She's the Humanitarian Coordinator at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
So my team and I do exactly what that suggests. We coordinate humanitarian assistance on behalf of the Australian government.
Assessment is about figuring out the scope of the disaster. What areas are affected, how many people are affected, and who needs the quickest response.
Once they've done that assessment of needs, then they'll look at whether or not they're actually able to respond in terms of their own national capability.
It also might be that they need special expertise, and so for an event like an earthquake, that might often be urban search and rescue teams, and they're quite specialised resources. Once you've been through the assessment phase, you kind of know what's happening in the context, then you can plan.
This part of the process is about working out the specific needs of the affected communities and figuring out how to get there.
So if we see what's been transpiring in Morocco, it took a while to even get access to some of the areas. If you don't have power, roads, bridges, these mountainous areas, maybe there's been landslips and other things, how are you actually going to access that? So that's a part of the planning, and you might need to draw on other assets like helicopters, for example.
Here, governments will often work with non-government organisations like the United Nations or the Red Cross Red Crescent movement to make sure communities get the help they need.
And they're often the ones that are on the ground with the ability to provide the kind of support that's needed in response to a crisis, whether it's supplies or expertise, medical teams, those sorts of things.
And that's where you begin to see, have we got enough assets ourselves, or do we need to draw on others?
When disasters are beyond the ability of these organisations, the responsibility can fall to governments.
We might, for example, support through sending a disaster response teams. We did that in response to the recent 𝗖𝗨𝗥𝗬 cyclone. There we sent actually electricians and engineers. We also sent logisticians and other support teams. When we responded earlier in the year to the Turkey and Syria earthquake, we sent a team of 72 disaster assistance response experts, including 68 search and rescue teams.
On the ground, humanitarian aid is guided by three principles.
Humanitarian aid or assistance is support that we provide to save lives, alleviate suffering, and really do it in a way that protects human dignity.
To make this happen, it takes a lot of specific expertise.
There might be engineers required, there might be medical teams required, logisticians are often required, just in terms of, in particular, moving supplies.
Legal advisors, specialists, for example, in international humanitarian law or disaster law, moving massive amounts of material between countries can sometimes be pretty tricky.
Sanitation is often really, really important. What you find is where people have been displaced from their homes, that's when you get an increase in disease.
This on-the-ground response is about getting communities to a point where they can begin to rebuild infrastructure like homes, schools, hospitals and markets.
If we look at the images again that we've seen in contexts like Morocco, but also Libya, recovering from that is going to take a long time. The rebuild of infrastructure, the rebuild of housing, re-establishing schools, the medical systems to operate, etc. And everyone is going to respond a bit differently, so that's a part of the challenge.
Often communities will work together with non-government organisations to assist putting their lives back together.
The recovery process is actually all about asking community first what they need. So once you sort of get beyond the sort of critical phase of just re-establishing the basic infrastructure, shelter, housing, water, some semblance of being able to function within a community again, then the recovery phase really starts with engaging with those communities.
So what we work on is making sure or trying to support communities to actually be prepared for disasters. That's really important because it can actually reduce significantly the impact of disasters on communities.
This recovery phase can and does take years.
Here in Australia, so for example, the recovery work from the 2019-2020 bushfires is still ongoing. Many communities are still not at the point of themselves saying, we feel like we are sort of back to a normal state. So I'm sure in the Moroccan context, it's going to be potentially very different to what we have experienced and do experience here in Australia through recovery.